paper did not exist. Not as we know it today. These pages in my Bible, it really irks me sometimes. They're so thin you can see through them. Paper as we know it did not exist. The ancient people of Palestine and the adjoining countries, including Egypt and Mesopotamia regions, adopted many kinds of materials for writing. The Bible itself documents several of these, and this is what I find so fascinating. If we look, the Bible it's an incredible book. As we look at the Bible, we look at it as how we're to live our lives. What we oftentimes as Christians don't look at is the historical aspect of the Scriptures. Okay, so let's begin here. Stone is believed by archaeologists to be the oldest surface to be written on. You go back into Egypt, the Egyptians wrote, they had a written language, they wrote on stone. The oldest substantial portion of the Hebrew language, the written Hebrew language, those writings are found on stone dating back as far as 925 BC. So not the Moses era by any stretch of the imagination. But the oldest that we have known to exist, the Hebrew writings date to 925 BC. And that just to give you an idea of where that is, that's during the reign of King Solomon. Okay? And those documents that are on stone are written regarding King Solomon. Now, what that does is twofold. That tells us, number one, a writing surface was stone. Number two, when you look at that stone document, that stone artifact, I'll call it, it verifies our Bible contains about King Solomon. It verifies that Solomon was a man who existed when the Bible said he existed. I'll submit that to you as evidence. Number two, I want you to turn back with me to the book of Exodus chapter 31. This document itself does not exist today, but this is a reference that would help us to compare artifacts to reality. In Exodus chapter 31, we find what we know of as the Ten Commandments, the law of Moses. And in verse 18, I want you to notice what is said. And he gave to Moses, he being God, gave to Moses when he had finished speaking with him on Mount Sinai, the 2 tablets of the testimony, tablets of stone, written with the finger of God. I want to submit to you that, my friends, is the first writings in the Bible. The first writing in the Bible was not the book of Genesis. The first writing in the Bible was a set of stones that contained the 10 basic commandments of God. That is the very beginning and foundational document of our Bibles. I really wish that someday we would find at least a fragment of these stones. And they may be unearthed at some point by archaeologists, and they may not. It does not change the fact that we have evidence right here before us and documents in the Bible where we write on stone. The second writing medium is clay tablets. These apparently were widely used before the production of paper. If we look at Ezra, let's look at Ezra for a moment and bear with me as I find this Old Testament verse. Ezra chapter 4 and in verse 1, I want you to see something here. Now when the adversaries of Judah and Benjamin heard that the returned exiles were building the temple to the Lord, the God of Israel, they approached Zerubbabel. I'm sorry, I must have the wrong passage. Anyway, there's a passage in Ezra, and I apologize, I will look this up and correct it. We must have a typo on the screen. There's a passage in Ezra that talks about, oh, I know what it was. Never mind. Ezra chapter 4, verse 1 talks about this reconstruction of Jerusalem. Okay? If you look, there is a section in the Chronicles of the Kings that mentions this particular thing. That we have a piece of clay tablet on it that is preserved, an artifact that has been found that details not this particular passage, but what that document documents, and I wish I had a picture for it for the screen. What that document documents is verse 2. They approached Zerubbabel, the heads of the fathers, and said to him, "Let us build with you, for we worship your God as we do." There's a document that, a shred of clay that has writings on it that is not Bible, that documents the rebuilding of the temple. And it documents this particular passage and references it. The Old Testament may have been preserved very well on clay tablets. Moses might have received the stone tablets on Mount Sinai. There's a good chance that the clay tablets mentioned here in Ezra, again, chapter 4, and in verse 10. Look what it says. "And the rest of the nations, whom the great and noble," and I'm going to mispronounce his word, "Osnapar deported and settled in the cities of Samaria, in the rest of the province beyond the river." Again, verse 10 is a shred. We actually have that portion of the book of Ezra written perhaps by Ezra himself with the name Osnapar, if I'm pronouncing it right, Osnapar, on it in the Hebrew language. So there is a document that says that the book of Ezra actually existed, and that we have on a shred of clay Ezra chapter 4 and verse 10.